weighed against a number of challenges. However, it is making great progress. COVID-19 has shown that technology is no longer a luxury, but an important component of the education process. In presenting solutions, a wide range of factors must be considered, with most learners returning to school in the next month. Now, this morning we discuss how effective online learning really is, and we're joined by Philip von Ziegler. He is the Global Head of English Markets at Smartick. Philip, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
I suppose it remains the important and the most debatable question: is online learning really that effective?
Yes, so online learning is effective. For a long time, it's been this debate: is online learning or is technology ever going to replace the traditional learning environment? Now, it's not about replacement. It's about being a complement to the existing system. And as we've seen with coronavirus, this lockdown has been an absolute catalyst for the adoption of online education. But in a country like ours, it's a struggle to get that access that many students need. So in short, it is an effective means of learning. But the more complex answer to that question relates to whether or not that student as an individual can effectively learn online. And then if the environment that the student learns within is an effective learning environment for that student.
And how can online learning be enhanced in the era of COVID-19?
So firstly, in South Africa, we need to spend a little time focusing on infrastructure improvements, to provide access to education to children across the country. We need to look at providing access to the internet first and foremost, and making smart devices available to students that don't have them. That said, we do have challenges. It's not the easiest thing to do, but in a time like this where students are forced to work from home, we have to adapt. And I think partnerships with private companies like tablet or laptop manufacturers should be on the priority list of the government when it comes to considering how to continue this education process, because lockdown is something that may continue, and the coronavirus pandemic may be the first. Hopefully it's the last, but we don't know what the future holds.
The reality, Philip, is that students who struggle with face-to-face or in-person classes is more likely to struggle with online classes. So how can this be addressed? Because we know that there is a lack or insufficient support mechanisms available for online learning.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. One of the things that online learning does, which in-person learning struggles to do, is if you use gamification and online learning models in the right way that stimulate the child's learning experience in such a way that the child actually starts enjoying learning, that's a really important thing. Like, let's take maths, for example. Yeah. Maths anxiety is a real problem. Mm-hmm. And when students develop maths anxiety, normally after a period of not understanding the maths that they're doing, falling behind in the classroom, that anxiety it gives them a sort of a lack of confidence, not only in maths, but in the other subjects as well. And in an online environment where there's no peer pressure, no other eyeballs looking at whether or not you got your good result or a bad result, it's just you and the computer, it's you and the program. That does give that child confidence. It develops this confidence where maths anxiety simply doesn't become a problem anymore. Yeah. Now for some students it is easier to learn in classroom, but some students it is easier to learn online. And what we must remember is the traditional classroom doesn't cater for all learning styles. You've got some students that are visual learners, some are tactile learners, some need to learn simply through doing. And if you have an effectively built an adaptive online program that sort of adapts itself to the way that the student learns, what you are able to create is a sort of slightly more effective learning method for certain children, especially children that have learning challenges. Like we commonly misdiagnose learning challenges like dyscalculia or dyslexia, other more serious learning challenges, including the likes of ADHD, or even kids that have Asperger's and autism. through an adaptive learning program online, these kids can feel as comfortable in a classroom, in a virtual classroom, as most do in a traditional classroom.
Philip, how can South Africa address digital inequalities in e-learning, taking into cognizance the fact that many schools have little or no technological facilities? How then do we solidify a commitment towards e-learning with such challenges?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest problems. And, if I would be lying if I told you that I had an easy answer for this.
Yeah.
If we look at a report from the World Bank recently and many other reports, it suggests that after this coronavirus period and this sort of lockdown that we've had for the last 12 months, we are likely to suffer across the world this 6 to 12 month loss of learning. And that learning gap is going to be a generational loss of learning that's going to affect kids who have gone through this fundamental time in their development without having been able to go to school, without having continued their learning. So what online learning has been able to facilitate in this time is to prevent kids from losing that learning. And unfortunately, this loss of learning and this aggravation of this problem disproportionately affects economically disadvantaged children. So in order to get iPads and tablets and learning devices and internet, for that matter, in the household of kids that don't have it, this is really where the government needs to step up. In the end of the day, it is I will be but in terms of a solution, what we need to do is we need to figure out a way for government to work together with private companies, get tablets out there, get laptops out there. But the bigger problem really is the income inequality that we face in South Africa. We're the most income unequal country in the world. And, the systemic issues that causes extends beyond some of the short-term remedies that we may come up with. It doesn't really help providing schools with tablets and devices and internet cables when those things inevitably end up getting stolen. And this is unfortunately part of a much bigger socioeconomic problem that still persists in this country. So this is not a very easy thing to resolve, but hopefully we can slowly make improvements over time and focus on education and sort of position this as a priority. In the end of the day, education really is sort of at the root cause of a lot of the problems that we have around the world. And through focusing on education and providing access to education, over time, we should be solving many of our big problems.
And having said that, South Africa has some of the highest cost of data on the continent, if not the highest. And this means that people can't always easily access information, isn't it?
Correct. Data cost is a huge problem. And this is something that people have it's an issue that's been brought to the fore in the last couple of years. Some of our big carriers have made small steps in making data accessible. I personally believe what needs to be done is, again, this needs to be a public-private partnership between some of our biggest data carriers in the country and the government, and saying, hey, let's make education apps free. Let's make education apps dataless. And a certain category of online applications and web services should be made dataless in the same way that when you log on to certain banking apps, you can do that through dataless services. There needs to be a real push to making certain education programs completely free. It needs to be subsidized by a combination of the government, tax incentives on the public side, and getting the mobile carriers on board to say, hey, for the last X amount of years, we've benefited from super high data costs, right? Let's do our part and carry the cost for the next couple of years. Let's work together with the government, make education apps accessible, right? And have this entire category of both web services and education applications and programs easier to access. And I think that would make a very big difference.
Philip, in most cases, learners are facing personal problems which force them to lose concentration during lessons. So how is this dealt with when teaching happens online?
So it depends on the program. But if you look at any of the research, there's a lot of literature that suggests that a student or a child, for that matter, optimal attention span is about 15 to 20 minutes. And the traditional classroom environment, you're looking at 40 minutes, sometimes an hour long. So to have a child's attention for 15 to 20 minutes, you can do that effectively through an online program. What a lot of online programs are doing, like the company that I'm involved with, Smartick, for example, we have a 15-minute maths program a day. That 15 minutes is incentivized through gamification. So a kid does their 15 minutes and they have to do their 15 minutes in order to unlock the virtual world where they can entertain, they can take part in a whole bunch of interactive brain games, online tutorials, and they can essentially play this digital game. But in order to get there, they have to finish their 15 minutes of maths a day. So that's the incentive reward structure that some online programs are adopting into their education model. Really looking at the psychology of a child and saying, hey, how do we keep that child's attention? And how do we make this an enjoyable learning experience that the child can associate positively with learning overall? Because that's the other problem, is there's a general negative association in the minds of a child when it comes to school and education. So how do you take that negative and turn it into a positive? You reduce the time spent on any single subject. You incentivize them through gamification and making it fun online. And, it's not that we want kids online the whole day. We want to optimize that learning experience. Get those 15 to 20 minutes done a day, because 15 to 20 minutes focused on a single subject, compounded 7 days in a row, consistently done, is more effective than a 2-hour lesson on a Monday and a 2-hour lesson on a Thursday, where after the first 20 or 30 minutes, kids lose interest, and there's not that daily consistency.
Philip, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too, man. Thank you. Hopefully, the new world of teaching and learning will be one where everybody has got equal rights to learn and teach. We just spoke to Philip von Ziegler on the future of education right here in South Africa.